I'm kind of laughing that it's just me, and I'm looking at it like so many of my former colleagues and my colleagues that I deal with, and somehow I'm speaking. I don't really, I mean, I think should be kind of an interactive discussion if we can, because there's so many people here, and I just want to, I was saying this to Michael, my little buddy, that I am so in awe of all of you and everything we have, I want to say, overcome as journalists in the last 5 years. It's shocking. I can't believe we're all still here, and I just want to applaud all of you for still doing this, and we need more good journalists. We need journalists, and I know the struggle is real. I mean, every day it's more, we don't trust the media, and it's more work that we have to do, and it's very different than what we all probably signed up to do in the first place. And I just want to kind of give us all a round of applause and start this out on a positive note, because it's really been, like, you guys, I'm just very in awe of being in this room with everybody right here, and I just want to applaud all of you. I'm serious when I say that, because it's really hard, and it's really hard right now. And in Philadelphia, it's really hard with so much of the crime and so much of what we've seen. I'm so happy Kelly's right in front of me, because I feel like we're at crime scenes all the time together, and it's kind of the people, my colleagues that I rely on so much to get through kind of being the crime reporter. Like, people ask, I'm sure you guys, they ask you what you do just in Uber rides over to summits. And you're like, I'm a crime reporter. And people are like, whoa, like, it's a lot. And it's a lot in Philadelphia, especially. And just kind of backtracking where my mindset has come from, and why I got into this, and my first job was at Fox 29 with Mr. Jeff Cole and Megan Duncan, and about almost 20 years ago, well, no, I guess it was like 17 years ago, my grandfather was involved in something called Abscam, which I don't know if anybody knows what that's about, but he was, yeah, maybe everyone knows what that's about. But anyway, he was convicted of a bribery charge. And the reason that I got involved in this entire industry was because I saw what it did to my grandmother after the fact. Now, I wasn't born at that point. And then the result that it had with my own family, my uncle ended up dying by suicide because the media really went at him. And I remember seeing and reading these articles that were just so demeaning about my family and my grandmother. And I was like, this is so unfair. This isn't who they are. And here it was, like, the story that at least I was told in my family, that my pop even took the bribe was really because he wanted to get my uncle into some sort of rehab. But the way that it was structured in those stories was he was a drunk. Like, he was a drug addict, he was a drunk. That was who my uncle was. And obviously my uncle was so much more, and I never got to meet him. Contrast that with, I grew up in a family where my dad was a DA, former DA. Basically, I was born and my mom said, you have to go make a little bit of money now we have a child and I'm a part-time nurse. And then my godfather was a homicide detective. So I guess it was natural that I came up in the crime world. It's not like the thing that I was, begging to be a part of. But I always keep, just on what Rachel said, I always keep kind of in mind the family that's behind the story, whatever that is. And so when we sit in court, and Kelly and I have sat in court many times together, and you're seeing like the family for the victim who's sobbing, then you're looking over at the defendant's family and they're also sobbing. And you're like, this is the worst. Sometimes just as a human that you have to be here and present whatever's happening in a human capacity, in a human way. And try and just tell the story without any emotion really involved. And it's such a hard job. And sometimes, when we do the stories, I want to say the quick turnover stories, it does feel like Clue sometimes, like where it's like, this shooting happened here in North Philly. And so it's like, why am I doing this story? And I've kind of tried every day. I'm not perfect at it. I know none of us are perfect, but we try every day. And I'm more than open to criticism. Email me, call me, whatever, and criticize me. It happens. And let me know what I did wrong and why you think. And then I'm thinking of a different perspective. But I know we're here to talk about police particularly, and it's been very challenging. And I think it's been very challenging, obviously, in a post-George Floyd world. We've had so much going on. I mean, in Philadelphia specifically, we've had obviously the pandemic, but before that, we had a police commissioner who resigned. We had a changeover in the DA, we had a rise in gun violence, and then we had a police officer who was shot and killed about 5 days before the city was then shut down. Then we had George Floyd, then we had civil unrest, and then we had Walter Wallace. And that was our, and the video was released for the first time. We've had so many things coming up, and every time we've tried to, hammer at the police, hammer at the DA, hammer at the mayor, what are you doing about this? And we get a lot of backlash on the other end. And then we get a lot of backlash, I know, on Twitter and social media of, you're not doing enough. You're not doing enough. You're not asking the questions. And that gets really difficult because you're like, no, I really am. Or I'm trying my best to ask as many questions, but you're hearing my 1-minute story that I worked 12 hours on, or 8 hours, or 3 days on. And that gets really frustrating, and it's hard to kind of like keep up doing this work because you're like, why am I doing it? And then you go out and you talk to the people. And then you're like, right, this is why I'm doing it. Because I get to tell this story, and if I don't tell it, or if Kelly doesn't tell it, or Jeff doesn't tell it, who are we telling it for? Like, who else is going to tell this story? Who else is going to be here to do this? And so I guess in dealing with the police, kind of coming back to this, I was interning at Channel 3 and was a PA at Fox 29, and there was a different way that we dealt with police, I want to say back 20 years ago. Everything they said was kind of gold. I mean, it was just the police said this, the police said that, and then you just would attribute it to that. And I think the police definitely used, and the Philadelphia Police Department at that time definitely used the media to convey their own message of like, here's what we're doing to combat crime in the city. And obviously there's been a lot of change with Twitter. Things are immediate. Videos pop up, and you have to verify all of that very quickly. And you have EPs or news managers telling you, here's how we need to get this on immediately. And I just kind of sit back with everybody, kind of like how I sprained my ankle. Go slow. Don't try and rush things, because if you do, you can really hurt somebody or something. So I have tried to really take that in, and it's a learning lesson every day. I'm not perfect at it again. But one of the things that I've tried to, and again, I don't want to pretend like I'm this example or anything, but this is just what I do, is see that the PIOs are different than the police department in a way. And that goes for kind of all entities, meaning that they speak for the police department, I question them, but it's not, and then when we're at a press conference, obviously there's a lot of pushback. But you also kind of, I've told my newsroom, like, if we're gonna hammer them about this, we also need to show up when they're doing something good. Like, we can't just be there for when something bad happens every time. So I've gotten into some discussions, I'll say, heated discussions with, we need to be there because we're covering a detective who is charged with, actually now convicted of sexual assault of at least three people. We've covered this other police officer who pleaded guilty to terrible crimes against children. We've covered these horrible things. We're covering press conferences, as we should, when the police screw up or when an officer kills somebody. But we also then need to turn around and be there when they're giving away toys to kids or something decent in the community. It can't just be one-sided no matter which side. And so it's been a constant struggle, I think, with, I've been labeled both pro-cop and anti-police. And I've been labeled like kind of everything. And I'm like, well, I guess if you can't figure it out, world, like, I guess maybe I'm doing an okay job. I don't know. I'm not perfect, but I also I enjoy questioning authority. I think most of us do. We like to figure out why people are doing things or why the police department is doing different things. But the one thing that a lot of people ask me, like, where do you get your sources, especially the younger reporters? And I have to say that a big part of that is actually in the courthouse. And I wish that more newsrooms and more people could actually go into the courthouse and see a case through and talk to the detectives, and maybe you'll learn something new about a different case, or maybe if you just pop in at 9 o'clock in the morning, you'll have that thing confirmed by 10 o'clock. And it's a great place for sources. But I think following through on a story is very, very important, whether the person's acquitted, convicted, pleads guilty, admits guilt, apologizes, whatever the case may be. I think it's essential. We can't just, as crime coverage, we can't just announce something's happening. This person is charged. This person is whatever, and then not have a conclusion to it. You can't always go, and I get that. And I know for TV, I mean, newsrooms are smaller than ever. What are you going to shoot? Is there video? I mean, I worked in television news for about 8 years, something like that, in being an assignment editor and being a PA. And I know that that's so difficult to do that, but it's a great place also for interns to go to, or for PAs to go and to sit in court and figure out what happened and understand the court system. Because so much is also happening in the criminal justice world in the courts that aren't being reported. Like there's things that judges are doing that are shocking, in my opinion, shocking, good and bad, and that should be reported and be out there. They have such an authority, and they're there for 10 years, at least in Pennsylvania, they're there for 10 years on that bench, and there's nobody watching. So if I had to pull one thing away from this whole thing, I would just urge all news managers to try and push somebody to be in court and see what's happening in court. And that's where you really also get the full story, maybe from the defendant's side, where you get this person was struggling with this, this, and this, and had this mental illness or had this addiction or something like that happen. Like, you get that full scope on the defendant's side that you wouldn't necessarily get on the other side. I was expecting Gabe to be here too. I don't know. He's not coming, or we don't know. Okay. Anyway, I don't know how much time. I was kind of expecting to banter, so I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments or wants to mention anything. Kel? I'm coming to you.
I feel like, well, I we talked about this a lot too, for people that are not in court a lot, and then, there's a high profile case or whatever, and then there is a packed courtroom of reporters, and I think sometimes trying to work through the language for
That's true.
Come forward used to covering it, and give any suggestions to that too about.
Right. I think it's obviously understanding it, but it's asking as many people as possible. And I know that this is supposed to be more Philadelphia police-based than court-based, but obviously they're all married together, and there's one, you could say, system that happens. You did remind me of another story that I wanted to tell. But I think that when it comes to the language of how court works, or any kind of criminal justice, is obviously talking to the DAs and developing relationships with them, of just trying to understand it. I mean, really, you have to sit in there and do it. It's like any other thing, hobby, or, like knitting or something like that. You just have to constantly do to get so familiar with it that it becomes like second nature, that this is what that means and this is what that means, and moving through it. But one story that I know that we, I think, covered together was we went out to when Eddie Irizarry, I know a lot of people aren't that familiar. I forget that it's not just Philadelphia in here. But Eddie Irizarry was a man who was shot and killed by police in a parked car in Fair Hill. And it happened in August, and Kel was very pregnant on a very hot day, running around. But one thing that happened that was very difficult, and I'm still trying to follow up on this, and I'm sure Jeff Cole is also trying to still follow up on this, is that we were told a very different version of events than what happened, and we were confused. I remember Kelly and I looking at each other being like, this doesn't make sense. There's something here that doesn't make sense. And the police commissioner at the time had rolled up and then left within 5 minutes. And I think there was something very weird about that it was, we have a man that's dead, you rolled up for 5 minutes and left before any camera could be pulled out. And then we're covering this, and we're getting a story about how the guy got out with a knife, and he got out and charged at officers with a knife, and then they shot back. But we're hearing from all the neighbors that are out there that they dragged him out of the car. So we're trying to figure out where this all came from. Fast forward a day or two, we get a press conference saying that the original information was incorrect, that the police gave. And by the way, there was a PIO, and then there were 7 white shirts that were behind this PIO, just listening, and they were just putting it out there like, this is what happened. And there still has not, we've asked for accountability, we've asked for where that came from, and we still haven't gotten clear answers on it. We now have a new police commissioner. The prelim has happened, and so it's trying to figure out now where to go next. And I'm sure we're all trying to constantly follow up on this story and try and figure out where this all came from. But the immediate piece of this was questioning, okay, but why do the neighbors say this and you say this? And we did attribute saying, police say this, police say this. And then they came out with, well, everything's preliminary at the beginning. Yes, we know that. Everything's preliminary until there's a full investigation done. And it was really difficult, and I know we're still trying with that. Another thing that we're trying with the FBI that I've also been trying to follow up on is the shooting around the same time, and this is just, it's kind of bizarre how quickly they happened, but there was a state police officer who shot and killed a kid on 95. Then we had an FBI agent who shot and killed another young man in North Philly about 2 weeks before. I can't remember exactly what neighborhood now. And then we had the Eddie Irizarry, and it all happened kind of in a row. And we've been asking, and I know I've been asking, and we're kind of getting still under investigation. And many times in court, this stuff will come out. This is where it happened, this is when it comes out. But I think that all of the law enforcement agencies want us to forget about it. And that's what I perceive, is that they just want us to forget about that this even happened in the first place. But I know we won't. Right, Jeff Cole? We won't. And we will continue to ask and try and figure out what happened. Whether or not we get the truth about it is one thing. But we know that when we questioned for the Eddie Irizarry case and the Mark Dial was the police officer, that we ended up getting, okay, well, we were wrong, and here's the body cam video for that. And there was a little bit of a mea culpa, but we still don't have the truth of where that all came from and what happened and whether or not there are disciplinary actions. And I think that that's a really hard thing that we're trying to all navigate now, is this internal affairs, how you get a personnel for a police officer who may have been accused of wrongdoing or maybe has a bad record. Like, how do you work through that file, but then also, and try and get correct information when you have these laws that prevent us from seeing those files. And we don't have time, honestly. I would love to sit here and say we have right to know requests out, but many of us don't have time to do that, and we move on to the next story the next day. And I would like to do it. I would like to sit there and write all these right to know requests to get all these police files, but that's just not gonna happen because there's so many other things that are happening every single day. We have, we're covering 2 kids that are, one was shot, the other one, and it all happened in a day, another one is missing, and caretakers are charged with murder. We're trying to dig into that, I'm sure, too, as a crime reporter, and figure out what happened there with those parents. Did DHS ever, make it out to that house? Were there any calls made? And it's constantly trying to dig while also not missing anything and then trying to figure out the next. And that's where good relationships come in. And that's where it's like you keep your good relationships with, in my opinion, the PIOs. The police are different. The commanders are different. We have to have those good relationships if you want to have communication and open communication. Ooh, Megan.
Yes, well, I want to riff on something you just said, which was Eddie Irizarry, and how you guys knew from the moment, as someone who talked to Kelly and said, no, you really have to go, we knew in the moment that was different. One of the reasons we knew that was different is because of police sources in the department, and to speak about how, Philadelphia police, it's very rare for someone to come in from the outside and be at the top of that police department. People have worked in that department for decades and get themselves on a deputy level, on a lieutenant level, and how all of those sources are out there in the community. And they're people that you have spent 17 years working on a relationship with, sources out there. Kelly has spent 10 years working on a relationship. Jeff has spent time working on a relationship with. And how they may not necessarily go on camera, but they're gonna flag you that something's happening. Yeah. They're gonna give you a breadcrumb.
Where you can kind of lead a little bit of where the story may go. Kind of getting rid of the chatter and the rumors that are online or on Twitter or something, which happens a lot here in Philly. I don't know how other municipalities are, but there's a lot of rumorville. Yeah. And then, oops. That's just my phone. I'm hoping my work one goes down the sewer. Great. Go ahead. Sorry.
To switch gears a little bit, how do you? What are some processes and practices that you use when it comes to responsibly using information from community members when, let's say, it doesn't line up with what police say, or I'm a morning EP, so there's not always a chance for police to, or PIO, to get you confirmed information overnight?
Well, I work that desk and that shift overnight, Saturday and Sundays at Fox 29. A couple pieces to that. So I think it's really important to kind of go with what you know and say what you don't know. Sometimes when you say we don't know this, we don't know that. What happened to Eddie Irizarry is, I remember also the neighbors were kind of funny because they were trying to sell us video at some point or sell us information. And we're like, we don't do that. And they're like, yes, you do. And we're like, we're not TMZ. Like, nobody has money really. So I don't know what you think we are. But it was just pinpointing. In my story, I did say neighbors dispute that claim because it was just they wouldn't go on the microphone. And they wouldn't say that, and I'm radio, which I know is different than TV and what you guys have to deal with. But it was at least mentioning it, that they say that that's not what happened, I think is important. And I think we tend to, I say this to our young reporters in the newsroom is just say what you see, say what you hear, say what you feel, like crime scene tape or, like explaining the scene or whatever's happening. I've said you could hear wails of, the mothers, out there or whoever the family member showing up like that. I've said that in reports. But sometimes you say they don't know who did it. They don't know if, or they won't say if there's a gun or they won't. Sometimes it's also calling out what you don't know and what they didn't tell you, especially when you feel it's a really big story. This is all the information, like the Eddie Irizarry thing, it was very much, or the Eddie Irizarry story is very much, this is the only information they're giving us. And they were very tight-lipped. And I think sometimes it leads the public to also put pressure on the police departments to say, okay, but what the hell happened? And city council got involved and other places just putting pressure on that department. And maybe it's a phone call we don't see or hear about from this person to that person saying, your police department's being mum about this. Why? The public has a right to know, which I love those people because we need to open that up. Yeah. Sorry, I get excited. Go ahead. Sorry.
2 quick points to back up what you just said, I believe. First is that let me preface this by saying I'm not anti-police. God bless them, they have a hard job. But I've dealt with cops who've lied to me, who have committed crimes. They're human like everybody else, and they want to spin their own version of events. But the first point is that I work with stations around the country. I see a problem with propaganda. You want to just take the cops' press release, publish it online, put it on the air, move on. No attempt to get those alternative narratives that you're just talking about.
Yeah.
And the second point related to that is this came up earlier with police access. When I was a crime reporter, I had sources inside the police department, the police chief, et cetera. Now most police departments don't want to talk to the public. They're hiding behind PIOs. So many of those PIOs are hired from in-house, they're not trained journalists. And so,
yes.
As you said, the only version of events you're going to get is what they posted on Facebook. So many of our stations across the country are dealing with those two issues.
Totally. And I just want to point out, too, when you're saying that with the PIOs, right or wrong, with a lot of the comms people within our world, I try and give feedback in a nice way or not nice way of this can't be an hour and a half long, this press conference, when you're trying to get to one point and we all have 1 minute stories and people have noons, 5s, 4s, 4:30s, whatever, like this can't be that long. And that gets really frustrating to me because like we're not gonna show, I'm not gonna say we're not gonna show up, we're gonna show up, but we can't deal with that. And then I also am trying to sometimes on the side and behind the scenes, I'll say fight the fight of Okay, but why? I'm just curious why you won't tell us. And here's our perspective of this. Like just opening communication with your PIOs or with your police departments of saying like, what's your issue with, like with me, with us? Like what is the issue? And well, I don't trust the media. Okay, but did I do anything? And just trying to like give them back a little bit of their own medicine and explain also, which I've done, you know how you don't like to be painted with a broad brushstroke of like all cops are bad? Yeah, that's us journalists, and that's like local journalists. Like we don't all have an opinion about something, or we're just trying to get. I mean, I try to keep those open lines of communication. Again, I don't know if it's right or wrong, or if it's good or bad, but I think I want information. You have it. This could work out well for you, especially if you're looking for somebody, and why wouldn't you want to keep that line of communication open? You are a municipality. You are paid by the public. You are, you are responsible to the public and to the media. Anyway, sorry, there was somebody, oh yeah.
Just wanted to bounce off of that because I work in Milwaukee and we have our PIO is very famous for being uncooperative. I mean, we joke that we get more information when he's out of town than when he's in town. He just doesn't respond to emails. When he does, it's like 3 words. And
I feel you, we have those.
Right, and it's in the cycle where even when you try to build relationships, like you're mentioning with other police members, they're directing you back to him. And so, personally, I found as a general assignment at night, often covering crime, needing to get that information, you're trying to build those relationships, it's like almost like hitting a brick wall because I think of that lack of trust from police to media and having someone who's not cooperative and won't even open that line of communication.
Right.
So I guess from your perspective, having done this, do you have any tips for that? How do you work with a situation?
I mean, it's finessing, right? I mean, there's a little bit of, again, trying that. I mean, I don't know if you guys have a famous, I want to say like cold case or infamous cold case, like where there's something where they're trying to gain traction on it. And then having that just be like your little crack in the door of saying like, okay, well, could I sit down with a couple detectives and being human about it, like the weather, the Brewers, or I don't know, I'm really bad right now with that, Green Bay Packers, like, and just trying to kind of like be a person with them, because I think as soon as you kind of show like, I'm not like the media, I'm a human being first, I live here, I care about where I live, and I care about what happens in this community. Just, I think any kind of little crack that you can get, and then maybe that's your moment where the PIO is there and be like, can we just talk? Do we have an issue? Like, is there something you want to talk about? Because I'm all ears, and I'm open to it, and I'm fallible as a human and as a journalist, and what's your biggest qualm? Like, what's your, and just listening to them. Doesn't mean you have to do anything about it, doesn't mean you have to change anything about it, but I think sometimes just letting them maybe, I'll say yell at you in person and then ending it with like, okay, I'll try better or something and moving on can always kind of, it's just, communication. I say 101, I'm not trying to make it sound like I know, everything about being personable, but I think sometimes it's finding that level of like humanity with the other person on the other end, because they're also just trying to do a job and go home at night, just like you. And I think there's a way to like work that relationship. Go ahead, sorry.
Going off of that, I've had PIOs like that before, and I've asked them to lunch.
Yeah.
And I know that's like out of work, you don't really want to do that, but it's paid off because something I ran into is they wouldn't go on camera and say, oh, sorry, I can't. And I have to, with TV, I'm in Baltimore, I'd have to say, no, let me explain to you why.
Yeah.
We need to talk to you on camera because I need sound.
Right.
And, we're not newspaper, we're not radio, we have to have that visual. And you get to be upfront with them and really have a discussion. I've had discussions about their personal life even, and we start to connect, and it gives like that extra layer.
I agree.
And makes a big difference in reporting, and you gain that trust.
Right. And a couple things. One, it's so funny. Kel's been there. People think that I have a camera. I don't understand. I'll go like this with people. I'll just be like, do you mind if I grab Sal? Oh, I don't want to be on camera. And I'm like, there's no camera, I'm just radio. And they get very, nervous about it. But I do agree, also went to Towson, Baltimore. But I also think that it's just remembering that, like, at the end of the day, we deal with the worst, especially here at the Crime, Summit. We all deal with the worst of the worst of the worst of humanity. We see the worst. We're seeing terrible pictures. We're talking to families that are absolutely heartbroken, that have nowhere to go, and no one to turn to, and we're trying to help them. And then it's kind of at the end of the day, like, okay, well, I do have a house to go home to. I do have a 3-legged cat that will cuddle with me. I do have a meal on the table. I do have these things, and, like, you do too. As a cop, you get to go home to your family today, and you get to, let's hope, and you as a PIO get to do that. And so to your point, all your points, I guess, like bonding with that person just to human, and just saying, like, this is what it is. But I do think that on the flip side of that is the people that are elected sometimes want the out, and the people that are in the positions of power, like police commissioner, anybody of power, they want the out of, like, well, but what I'm saying is right, or what I'm saying is, and you're like, no, but I'm the one who I'm gonna question you about this because that's my job. And so I understand. I'll ask it respectfully. There's a famous press conference online that happened with me and a certain mayor when I had to remind him that he ran for re-election because he didn't want to answer the question. He was getting very flustered. And and it was one of those moments where it was like, you ran. Like, I'm just asking my question because we're in a press conference, and this is the way it goes, is I ask the questions. And yeah, I think they think sometimes, journalists, that they're asking, like, that we're asking because of us, when we're really asking because people are frustrated by what you're doing as a professional, or as somebody in office that's elected or appointed. Oh, sorry.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I also work in law.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Taking us in a different direction, so let me give you some advice. I'm from here. Our moms are actually friends.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're Dana?
Well, I'm her daughter.
Yeah. Dana's daughter. Okay.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Okay,
so
that's funny.
my
Sorry.
long-term goal is to end up in Philly, and my future brother and sister-in-law are both Philadelphia cops. A couple of years ago, one of them shot somebody. It was a justified killing, but one of the local channels identified his name, and the sole purpose of the article was to say we identified this officer, but we all know that people don't always click on the article to find out that it was justified.
Right.
People just saw the headline and the caption on Facebook and jumped to conclusions. So that obviously, upset me and frustrated me, but
Right.
it also made me nervous, if and when I do make it to the Philly market. I know you said you have family that was in the criminal justice system. I don't know if you still do, but what's your advice for just dealing with that potential conflict of interest, and even just on a personal, emotional level?
I honestly, I've learned to give less F-bombs because, maybe it's because I'm turning 40. I don't really know, but just, if you don't like me, that's fine. I don't really care. I mean, I'm just trying to be authentic, and it's I think we all are. We're just trying to get day to day. A lot of it was a lot of grief and loss that I've had in my own life. And also, I just see and talk to so many families that have experienced so much loss that, in the end of the day, I just go, whatever. If you want to hate me, that's cool. That's fine. It's your issue, not mine. I mean, truthfully, I think that, I definitely have had conversations with people that have been thought I think a certain way. And I'm just really, I think we're all just trying to get to the truth. How we say it is also very important. To your point, the truth and why we say it. And I think we all collectively, including myself, need to be more thoughtful about why we're doing a crime story, what we're doing, what we want to get out of it. And just, I've gone back to my news managers and said, well, why are we going to do this? Just curious. Is it just to fill time? And I've gotten that answer, yeah. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that. And I will have an argument with you about this, and we're not putting that on because I'm the crime and justice reporter, in the title that I didn't ask for, but I'm the crime and justice reporter, and we're not going to do that. And my bosses may even be watching, I don't know. But I've had those fights because I think it's really important to think about why we do things. If we all want to reframe how we cover crime, thinking about why something happens in the first place, or why you're following through with the story, or why you're doing what you're doing at the start is really important. However, I feel for all of the TV producers and EPs that have to fill 30 minutes, a half an hour, and they don't really know, sometimes how to do that with so little resource.
I love
Sorry.
that you say that. I am a manager, but I love when reporters push back. I used to be a reporter.
I appreciate that you love that reporters push back, because I don't think all of them do.
You know, I think a lot of that should happen in the editorial meeting.
Yeah.
And we are not afraid to take time in our meetings. Sometimes we've had meetings on for 2 hours because we needed to have a discussion. And we listened to everyone in the meeting. And everybody pushes back. And people ask different questions. But we need that.
Right.
Because then we can attack the story from all those points of view. Because
Right.
that's what your community is made of.
Totally.
Different points of view. So I'd love to hear that you challenge when they're just trying. Because, you know, as managers, sometimes we're just like, get it done.
I
We
know.
wanna get it done.
And I get it. I mean, we're all trying to just,
Yeah.
we're all trying to fill time and get through the day, essentially. And some days you just don't have the fight. I don't know about you guys, but I just sometimes don't have the fight. Go ahead, Leah. Sorry.
I just wanted to add on to your question with her working, downplaying a little bit, is consistency when working with these PIOs and with working with police officers if you worry about what they care. Especially in Philly, a little bit in LA, but especially in Philly, you really don't have to put on out here. So you don't have to act like you care when you work with these officials. If the reason is coming genuinely that you're just doing your job. And Kristen's very consistent when we're in these press conferences. They already know what they're going to get from her because she's consistent with the tone, with the objective. So with that PIO, I would suggest take the emotion out of it so it can bother you less and just get to the point. And then also maybe when you have the time, ask him, why don't people like you? Why do people have that? Why do people have that thought of you? What's going on with their reputation? If you're curious, just ask that person. That actually could be the human factor on how to break that, because that can kind of stop him in his tracks. Like, hey, people don't like you, and then you could actually respond like, no, people don't like you. You already know that. Like,
Totally.
I think we're dealing with a lot of officials just getting to the point. Like, we don't have time.
And the FaceTime, too. Like, seeing it FaceTime, face-to-face.
So one of the PIOs now, I have her cell because we talk about nails now. One day I noticed her acrylic was longer than mine. I was like, look at this feeling, since works with the long nails. We now get along. Like, just get to the point. They know why you're here, so you don't have to act like that's not what it is.
And I will say that one of the things that Michael actually brought up too earlier was trauma bonding, and there is a little bit of that. Like, there's a little bit of, you know, like, I probably work more with Kel than I work with some of my own people. And like, I know you're more nightside lead, but like, and I've been, you're dayside now? Yes. Anyway, but you know, you become kind of more I'm sure you guys all know this as reporters, is you kind of almost become friendlier with the people that you see every day and that you're even from the other stations, but also in court. Like, I go to court every single morning typically, and I see those DAs all the time and those sheriffs, and just like saying hello, and you get tidbits, I would say, of information. You know, the Fairmount Park rapist thing, so long story, and everybody here in Philly knows it, but Fairmount Park rapist was, I did a Gone Cold about this, but he basically raped or tried to rape 4 different women. He killed one of them. The whole story, if you read it as a movie script, you would not believe it, how it all happened, because there was, you know, fast forward now 20 years later, and there were some slashings that happened at Pennypack Park with a guy with the machete, and that happened, what was this, December? Over here in trying to work the Rebecca Park the Fairmount Park rapist cold case, they did Ancestry.com and got to this name, Elias Diaz. That some cop goes out to these Fairmount Park slashings after they hold a press conference about it at Pennypack Park. They arrest the guy. Guy turns out to be named Elias Diaz. They said, he looks familiar. But these people told us he was dead over here. And within a day, they had confirmed DNA that like the guy they picked up, that randomly they picked up in the beginning of December, turns out to be the Fairmount Park rapist that they were trying to find for about 20 years. I mean, it's kind of a crazy story. But that being said, multiple DAs and police officers that I saw that day in the CJC knew this was being worked on. And I'm going up, I'm like, wait, really? Like, really? And I had like 5 people be like, really? No, really? No, really? And by the way, there's gonna be a press conference at 4:30 about it. And I know. But it was just like bananas, because it was you were hearing about it, but it was so crazy that this would be the connection between the two pieces. And so sometimes it is just literally getting a cup of coffee with somebody or running into them getting a cup of coffee because you were in their courtroom for the last 2 weeks watching something that they did or some motions that they filed or something. Like, it is just those tiny little bits of FaceTime. I mean, it really is the more you show up at scenes, the more you're in court, the more that you're at the good part, the good events or whatever, the more FaceTime, the more I think you're like chipping away at the facade of being the media.
Kristen?
Yeah. Hi, Jeff Cole.
Hi there. First, on the Irizarry case, you folks obviously aren't from the city, but this is a profound breach of public trust, what happened there. The police department told the public that Eddie Irizarry, a 27-year-old person with mental health issues, was out of the car swinging at officers with a knife. He was not. He was seated in the vehicle. He was shot there. The officer who shot him is in jail on a murder 1 count. That is what happened in the city of Philadelphia. They have never cleared up what happened. Never cleared up what happened.
And we have a new police commissioner now.
And I think that's the reason why we may not know. Video of this event was released. It is as graphic and as a horrific event that you could possibly see. Officer was wearing his body cam. I asked Stanford, who was the interim police officer who sat down for an interview with us, what he knew about that. And this is the end of the year, and there was still no answer. So with that as a context, I would urge you not to kiss the police's ass. I really wouldn't. Look, I understand they won't talk to you. Report that they won't talk to you.
Yeah, definitely that.
And I would try the best you can to develop sources around the PIO. That's
Thanks you. I'm sick and tired of hearing people say that the PIOs are somebody to sit down and have lunch with. They don't work for us. They don't work with us. They work for the chief.
And they don't have to like you, and you sure as hell don't have to like them. And I guess I would give you one other piece of recommendation. My background is much more investigative and maybe more lean-in aggressive. But if they won't talk to you, torture the chief at the next press conference. And I mean torture the chief at the next press conference. And it'll be streamed. It's going to be streamed. Put a mic on, torture the chief. I mean, they'll figure it out. And we don't have to be friends with any of these folks. They've got a real tough job. Paid well, get a really good pension, retire at 20 years in. None of us do. So I would suggest a taste of blood in your mouth, lean-in approach, working sources outside the PEO, and believe that the cops have their own agenda here is a good way to remember it when trying to cover them.
I mean, I agree in part to that. I think it's harder when you have...
Work a beat.
Right. And every single day I have to talk to, I'll say the PIOs, but multiple police officers. But also they've contradicted each other sometimes too. And that can work out to your advantage. There's plenty of police officers who are like, that guy's lying 100%. And
that's what I mean by developing sources outside the PEO, because you've got to really test the information.
I think the lunch part, though, is when you have no relationship, you're not going to make it any better, and yet you're still going to be, for what good are, you know what I'm saying? Like in your case, and I don't know, geez, I'm dropping everything.
I think it's fine to have lunch with sources, and if you can work it out, that's fine. But a lot of us are never going to have time to do that.
Sources I think what the point was like over here was that there's no communication in Milwaukee with with the PIO, right?
Well, you'll see him on scene, and he'll talk to me. He knows what's going on. That's your lunch. Well, and I'll talk to him. And
it doesn't have to actually be sit-down lunch. I mean, it's like...
Right, talk to him. I said to him, I'm like, wow, it was so great to finally speak to you. I sent you probably 10 emails, and I don't hear back. He was like, oh, he'll write it off. But then it's in those moments where I do need information from you now to do my job, and I'm not in front of you, and you still won't talk to me. So I'm like, how do I...
Have you complained to his boss?
Oh, yeah.
Complain to the assistant chief, to the chief. Have your news director complain to the boss. Complain to the state rep or the city council. try to hurt them. I mean, try to work them hard.
Well, I think it's also sometimes like, I mean, if you have we've had moments here in Philly where we had, and RTDNA helped us with this, but like having, I guess, the group, maybe write a letter, like all of your stations, write a letter and say this is, and like maybe even post that letter. Something similar happened here when some people were not allowed in a press conference, and there was a letter posted of like, no, this is a free press for all. And there's, I think, like there's something, I don't know, maybe it's just me and what I'm noticing, but there's something about like popularity for these politicians and these city officials or town officials has become more important than actually doing the job sometimes. I don't know if anybody else notices that within your own city, but there's a lot more of like, well, this doesn't look good, so we're not gonna put this out, or we're not gonna talk to you, or we're not gonna answer this question, or we can't confirm that, or whatever the case is. And I think sometimes when you group together, I mean, we've definitely had those moments. Like Leah, Kelly, like we've all had those moments where like, there was a press conference, I won't out, whatever, but something happened, whatever, and they were like, they wanted to bring back certain people and have other people, and I said, I'm not playing with that. Like, we're not doing that. Either everybody's in or nobody's in. And I'm not gonna stand for it for other people, you know, not to be allowed into a press conference. This is not gonna happen. Everybody is allowed in a press conference in public buildings. And, you know, you can be nice about it. You don't have to necessarily have lunch. We know Jeff isn't a fan, and I'm not saying I agree. I'm not saying I disagree. I'm not disagree. I agree. But I'm just saying that having, to Leah's point, it's like the lunch can be just the small talk.